In 1905, renowned psychologist Edward Thorndike proposed an intuitive yet very influential framework called the law of effect, which stated that the outcome of a specific action attenuates or exacerbates the occurrence of the action in future. Thus, actions resulting in rewards are repeated, while those following punishments are attenuated. This framework influenced the development of yet another very influential theory in psychology called the operant conditioning theory, proposed by the renowned American psychologist B.F. Skinner. In line with the law of effect in his theory, Skinner also proposed that operant behavior is controlled by its consequences. Based on this logic, gamblers should decrease their gambling engagement following losses, considering that losses are punishing outcomes. But what we observe is a paradoxical behavior, and the answer to why we observe such persistence despite losses came from the discovery that Skinner and his colleagues and students made in 1957. In a series of experiments with animals, they discovered that the behavior of an organism could be modified via reinforcement schedules.
Learned that pecking the disc produced a reward. Then the behavior of pecking could be studied in relation to how often that reward was offered, or in Skinner's terms, what was the schedule of reinforcement.
The main thing is what we call schedules of reinforcement. Reinforcement is what the layman calls reward, and you can schedule it so that a reward occurs every now and then when a pigeon does something. We usually use a response with a pigeon pecking a little disc, a little spot on the wall, and you can reinforce with food, but you don't reinforce every time. You're perhaps every 10th time, or perhaps only once every minute or something like that. There are a very large number of schedules.
A reinforcement schedule is any procedure that delivers a reinforcer to an organism according to a well-defined rule, such as delivering a reward following a certain amount of time or in a certain ratio. Skinner and colleagues proposed 4 main types of reinforcement schedules, namely fixed interval schedule, variable interval schedule, fixed ratio schedule, and variable ratio schedule. Skinner and colleagues discovered that each of these schedules shape and condition our behavior in a specific way. But the one schedule that resulted in the most steady and persistent behavior, which was very resistant to extinction, was the variable ratio schedule. And Skinner discovered that it is this particular reinforcement schedule which was more powerful than any other schedules, and explained why negative outcomes like losses in gambling resulted in persistent gambling instead of attenuating this behavior. Now, in this video, we will dive into the variable ratio schedule. But if you are interested to learn more about the other types of reinforcement schedule and the operant conditioning theory as well, then check out these 2 videos from our channel to dive deep into these topics. The variable ratio schedule proposes that a behavior is rewarded after an unpredictable number of responses. This unpredictability induces an anticipation wherein the organism always expects the reward to be presented in the next trial. It is this anticipation and expectation of securing a reward that makes the behavior persistent despite the lack of rewards. And Skinner proposed that it was this mechanism that underlied the persistent gambling behavior we observe amongst gamblers. In practice, modern gambling machines implement a variation of variable ratio reinforcement schedule called the random ratio reinforcement schedule, which slightly differs than the variable ratio schedule originally proposed by Skinner. Let's understand the difference. According to Skinner's theory, the variable ratio schedule has an average range within which the animal can more or less predict the occurrence of the reward. For example, if the VR schedule of a roulette wheel is 10, it means that over a large number of gambles, a player can expect to receive a reinforcement such as a win after an average of 10 responses. However, within the individual gambles, the exact number of responses required for the reinforcement to occur can vary. This is where the unpredictability and anticipation element in the VR schedule stems from. This means that sometimes it might take the player more than or fewer than 10 responses to get the reward. But over time, the average remains constant. The random ratio schedule, on the other hand, posits that the probability of gaining a reward in every gamble remains independently determined. Thus, unlike the variable ratio schedule, the rewards delivered under the random ratio schedule are truly random and cannot be estimated on an average per se. This random ratio-induced independence of outcomes observed in gambling machines contributes even more strongly to the unpredictability of the reward delivery, in turn strengthening the anticipation of the reward and by extension the persistence in the face of losses. Such increased persistence often leads gamblers to chase their losses despite long losing streaks, in turn resulting in severe negative consequences in their financial and social life and negatively impacting their psychological and overall well-being.